For NYUp and Syracuse.com, I am Matt Parrino, joined as always by Ryan Talbot. And we are fresh off the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 53 is over, and now for Buffalo Bills fans, the real season begins, the 2019 offseason, as we start in free agency and then the draft in April, and so much to cover in the next few months as we get ready for that. But as we start on this voyage, we want to kind of take you through our top three targets in free agency and the draft. We're going to start with free agency coming up very soon here. Ryan, hit me with your first one.
Yeah, Matt Paradise. He's been my number one target all along. Center off the Denver Broncos. You just have to hope that the Broncos don't extend him before free agency. Hopefully he gets to test the market, because I really do think that he's a great fit for the Buffalo Bills.
No, that's a great target, and we've had him, atop most of the lists that we've done compiled over the last couple of months. A real solid option. For me, my number one target, as bad as the offensive line is, I really think that there needs to be some veteran leadership and proven playmaking ability brought into this wide receiver room, and I'm going with Golden Tate. And a lot of people talk about, Golden Tate wanting to go to a winner, Golden Tate maybe being at the end of his, a prime, and all of that is probably true. But what he brings is, as he showcased in the playoffs this year in 2018-19, is he could still make plays. I mean, that big touchdown at a crucial point in that playoff game a few weeks ago, that's something that I think the Bills can only use. And then you go out and you get a young receiver. We'll talk about that, but that's my number one target. Who's number two for you?
Number two is right tackle Darrell Williams, and I know some fans are getting sick of hearing all of the free agents from the Carolina Panthers and how, joining the Buffalo Bills, and how we've seen that with Brendan Bean, with Sean McDermott. But this is a need for the Bills. Again, sticking with that offensive line, right tackle is a need. They could re-sign Jordan Mills, and Jordan Mills isn't necessarily I guess I wouldn't call him one of the worst tackles in the league, but he's nothing more than an average tackle. And if you're looking to get the run game going, if you're looking to protect Josh Allen, you need to upgrade all the way across that line, and having that connection could benefit the Bills with Darrell Williams, and I think he, again, would just be a great fit for this offense.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to stick on the offensive line right there with you for number two for me. I'm going with Roger Saffold from the Los Angeles Rams, I should say, a guy that, featured on this offensive line for the Rams. Todd Gurley, what a run game that they've been able to produce in L.A. for Jared Goff, Sean McVay, in this offense, and I think that's something that's been sorely lacking for the Bills. You talk about losing Richie Incognito and Eric Wood, two kind of stalwarts in the middle of that offensive line, and you saw what that cost the Bills this season. I think you bring in a veteran guy like Saffold. He's going to cost some money, and I think that could be what allows him to leave L.A. and not be a part of that Rams team anymore, but I think he would be a huge coup for Sean McDermott, Brandon Bean in free agency. Hit me with number three.
Number three, another Carolina Panther, Thomas Davis. And when we're talking about these first two guys that we both mentioned, we're talking about big money most likely for all four players. I don't think that's going to be the case for Thomas Davis. He is getting towards the end of his career. He's getting up there in age. I think you can get him for a very reasonable deal. I think you could probably throw some incentives in there. But there would be zero he knows all the terminology for this defense already, I would imagine. There's not going to be any kind of learning curve for him there. Lorenzo Alexander has already spoken about it this week. We wrote about it on the site, how he said, just imagine all the different packages we could run if we have Thomas Davis there. Lorenzo Alexander could be more of that off-the-edge pass rusher, which he had a lot of success at this season. And you can alternate your guys. You don't want to take Matt Milano off the field. You don't want to take Tremaine Edmonds off the field, but you want to get as much leadership as you can on both sides of the ball, and it would not hurt to bring in a guy like Thomas Davis who can teach those younger linebackers a few things, but would also just overall with the entire team bring more leadership to that locker room.
For sure. And I think that I'm going to stay with you right there and talk about maybe a less headline-grabbing move. And I'm going to the running back position. You saw that group struggle in 2018. LaShawn McCoy obviously at the top, but I don't know necessarily if Chris Ivory is your long-term answer as the backup. I'd like to see the Bills take a shot on T.J. Yeldon from Jacksonville, a guy that's desperate for a new start. He's not going to cost you a lot. And what I really like about him is two things. Number one, you look at Mark Ingram, another Alabama running back who struggled in his first couple years in the league, as has T.J. Yeldon for the most part. He's had a couple nice spurts, but he's a guy that really can impact a game in the run game and in the pass game. And I think that that's something that you're going to really need as you continue to try to develop Josh Allen. Give him a safety valve, a guy like T.J. Yeldon that could come in and be your starter, but could also be that number two running back on the depth chart behind a LaShawn McCoy, who you're desperate to keep for this 2019 season to see what else he can do. Transitioning to the draft, we got a couple, we've been hitting this hard over on the site at nyup.com. Make sure you guys check out all the coverage there. As we lead up into the draft, we've started to really dig into this crop of prospects. I was out at the Senior Bowl last week, got to meet a couple of very interesting potential options for the Bills, but let's narrow it down. Who are our top 3 targets in the draft? Doesn't have to be a mock draft per se, but if the Bills end up with one of these 3 guys, it would be a huge win. Ryan, hit me with number 1.
Yeah, number 1 is a guy that I've had mocked to them multiple times in my mock drafts, Ed Oliver. He is a guy that comes right in, replaces Kyle Williams, great against the run, great against the pass, can do it all. He's a guy that you're seeing in the mock drafts fall into that range, that 9 to 15 range right now. Now, it wouldn't surprise me that leading up to the draft in the next few months, if his draft stock improves significantly, I could see a team like Tampa Bay going after him since they're going to supposedly be moving on from McCoy. So there's a lot of moving parts here, but right now, Ed Oliver, I would love to see the Bills take him at number 9.
No, that would be, there a lot of the draft experts were talking about him as potentially a top 3 pick. So if the Bills could get him midway through the first round, if they trade down, or even if they stay at 9, quite the find there. But I'm going to go with my number 1 target as Jonah Williams, offensive left tackle, potentially interior offensive lineman from Alabama, a guy that also has been going very high in some mock drafts, as high as number 3, but a guy that at 9, if you're going to stay in that spot, you're looking for the most game-changing offensive lineman in this draft, and by most accounts, it still is Jonah Williams. He had a rough go of it in the national championship game against Clemson, and I think that took a little bit of the shine off of him going into this draft season. But a guy that has graded out as the top offensive lineman in this draft, and if the Bills are able to get him, not only do you get potentially your left tackle, give you some options to move Deion Dawkins back maybe to the right side, but if that's not going to work out, you have a top-notch interior offensive lineman where you're very desperate to fill some necessary holes there as well. So hit me with number 2.
Yeah, number 2 is an interior offensive lineman, Dalton Reisner, a guy that I was really impressed with leading up to the draft process, a guy that I thought had a really good week at the Senior Bowl based on everything that I read, based on everything that I've seen watching the game himself. Has a little bit of a mean streak, which I also kind of like. He seemed to really hold his own against some of the best college players in the nation. He's a guy that I could see maybe if there's a quarterback needy team calling the Bills at number 9, the Bills trade down, could be a potential target there, or maybe a player that the Bills trade back into the first round to go and get, because at this pace or at this rate, I think he's a first round talent.
And not only is he a first round talent, which I do agree, he seems like a Sean McDermott guy. I mean, down at the Senior Bowl, getting a chance to talk to him. First of all, he's very good friends with Harrison Phillips, which there's that connection right there. But he also seems like a guy that wants to come in and work and earn everything that he's going to get here, and that's music to Sean McDermott's ears, because that's the kind of catchphrase that he repeats over and over again throughout the season. For me, number 2, I'm going to go to a wide receiver, and this is why I'm okay with going out and getting a veteran, maybe a guy at the end of his prime like Golden Tate in free agency, because you can go out and get Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown from Oklahoma, who, by the way, it's not too often that you have all of the experts kind of in agreement, but 2 top ones from The Athletic, Dane Brugler, from ESPN, Todd McShay, both ranking Marquise Brown as their top wide receiver in this class. He's a game breaker, right? I mean, he's a playmaker. He's a guy that can, some injury concerns, some size concerns, but look at some of the best receivers in this game the last couple of years. I mean, take Julian Edelman playing for the New England Patriots, an undersized receiver, a guy that can make plays. Marquise Brown has the speed. He has the nose for the end zone, and I think that's a weapon that you would love to add to Josh Allen's arsenal. Wrap it up for me. We got number 3.
Irv Smith Jr. Now, maybe he's a guy that falls to the Bills in the second round. This is a loaded, and I mean loaded, tight end class, which should be music to the Bills' ears. But you don't want to sit around and wait to see who falls to you. If Irv Smith is your guy, go out and get him when you can. And he's a guy that if he's on the board when the Bills are on the clock in round 2, I wouldn't hesitate to get him. He's a guy that can come in immediately, I think, and help at tight end. And again, tight end's a position where you usually need a few years to develop to your ceiling, I guess is the best way to put it. But I still think he could come in from year 1 and contribute on this team. There's obviously that connection with Brian Daboll from their Alabama roots, and he's a guy that just one of my favorite tight ends in this really deep class.
No, that's great. And obviously, we both have, or I had him in a mock draft that we put out last week, a guy that is kind of climbing as this whole process goes along. But for me, number 3, I'm going to go back to the offensive line, a guy that I did meet down at the Senior Bowl as well, Andre Dillard from Washington State, a guy that, a mountain of a man to put a post up at the left tackle spot, really excels in pass protection, and that's where I think you want to bring in a guy at left tackle that you could develop along with Josh Allen for the next couple years that, may have to work on his run blocking a little bit. Didn't do a ton of it at Washington State, but at that left tackle spot, you want to find a guy that can protect your quarterback, can protect your franchise, and a lot of people think that Andre Dillard is going to be very good for a very long time. He didn't start playing football until he was in 8th grade, and ever since then, he wanted to quit initially, but then he decided after a few years that, hey, I might just be good at this thing. He's still learning, he's still developing, and I think that if at the right spot with the value there, I think Andre Dillard could be quite the find. Here we go. We're wrapping this up. Ryan, this is the time. This is what we wait for once the season ends, the next couple months. How excited are you for this whole process with all of this money that the Bills have to spend, all of these draft picks, and all of these potential free agents? How excited are you?
I'm very excited. I think Bills fans should be very excited because, again, Brendan Beane went out there. He really did fix Buffalo's salary cap. He has them in a good place now where I don't think they're going to go out there and go crazy by any means, but I think they're going to go out there and address one or two of their major targets pretty early in free agency. I think they're going to be aggressive trying to upgrade that offensive line or find another player somewhere on the defense where they feel like there's a need. Maybe that's replacing Kyle Williams before the start of the draft, so they have a little more flexibility there. But I think you're going to see a little bit of aggressiveness early on. I don't think you're going to see them go crazy by any means. But then with the draft, I think Buffalo's draft class from this past season and their undrafted class, because they found some gems there as well, they were a little overshadowed because you had some other really good classes. The Colts come to mind. The Bears come to mind. But the Bills did get a lot of contributions early on in year 1 from Brendan Beane's first true draft class, from Josh Allen, Tremaine Edmonds, Taron Johnson, Harrison Phillips. So, those names jump right off the page. Obviously, the undrafted free agents, the Levi Wallaces and the Robert Fosters. So there's a lot of reason to be optimistic that he's going to go out and find some immediate upgrades to help the Bills in this year's draft, too.
For sure. And guys, for all of your coverage, go follow Ryan Talbot on Twitter. He's at Ryan Talbot Bills. You can follow both of us at Bills Updates. We'll have all of our stories from NYUp and Syracuse.com all year long. And also follow me on Twitter at Matt Parrino. We will have you covered through the draft, through free agency, training camp, the season. Thank you so much for joining us as always. Ryan, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.